Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I hope you had a good night. And if you had any good April Fool's pranks pulled on you, or if you pulled any good pranks off, I would love to hear about them in the comments on Google Classroom. So, yesterday's lesson was a little bit trickier. I had warned you guys that you would be using multiplication to solve. Everybody seemed to have done really, really well with the addition and subtraction. So, I knew that, excuse me, that the division multiplication side of things would be just a little trickier because some of you still struggle with those basic facts. So I broke it up and we just used multiplication to solve yesterday, and now today we are going to use division to solve. So your learning target for the day is I can solve algebraic equations using multiplication and division. So yesterday we focused on that multiplication, like I said, and then today we are going to focus primarily only on using the division to solve. So remember, when solving for a variable, it is important to show all of your steps. Now, we're not together. I can't look at what you're doing necessarily yet. We're going to get to the point once we get a little bit more comfortable with things where you guys can actually upload your work into Google Classroom for me to be able to see. But for now, just make sure that you're following all the steps that I'm showing you so you get those good habits in place, okay? So it says, show all steps even if a particular problem seems easy. This makes it much easier to check equations and find it if and where you made a mistake. As we start doing more complex problems, you need to get in the habit of showing each step you take to solve for the variable. So yesterday on the left, I have y divided by 4 equals 3. And yesterday we had talked about if you see division, you're going to multiply to undo that division. And whatever you do to the left side of the equal sign, you're going to have to do it to the right side. So once I do that, what I'm left with, is, why did I write 3, you guys? Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm losing my marbles. So you would take divide by 4 and multiply it by 4, and that would cancel that out, leaving me with just y. So I would have y equals 3 times 4, and I know that 3 times 4 equals 12. So that's what we solved yesterday. Now, if I would plug that 12 back in, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I know I have the right answer. Now today we are going to focus on y times 4 equals 16. And to undo that multiplication, we have to do the inverse operation. Remember, that word inverse just means the opposite operation. And yesterday I reminded you guys that the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So if I have y times 4, remember that little dot symbol can equal multiplication, all I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 4. And yes, you could do the traditional division symbol, but I like to write mine showing like a fraction because I know that means division as well, and it just kind of keeps things a little bit neater. So on the left side, I have multiplication, so I divided by 4. That cancels that out. So I'm left with y equals 16 divided by 4. And what I know is that y equals 4 because 16 divided by 4 is 4. So if I would plug 4 back in for y, 4 times 4 is 16, so I know I did it correctly. So yesterday we worked on this side of things. We worked on x divided by 2 equals 4, and remember we multiplied by 2, multiplied by 2. That left me with x equals 4 times 2, which means x equals 8. When we plug 8 back in, 8 divided by 2 is 4, okay? That should have been fairly simple, and from what I saw on your Google form that you turned in for homework, everybody did a great job. There were a couple that seemed to be a little trickier for some of you. The one in particular that I'm thinking of had, I think it was x minus 2 equals 11, or it was 2 minus x equals 11. That's what it was. So it was 2 minus x when the number is in the front, and some of you weren't sure if you were supposed to add or subtract that. So if you don't see a negative symbol in front of a number, you automatically assume that it's positive, and you're going to subtract it. So you'd subtract that from both sides. So some of you messed that one up, and we'll practice that on Friday. We're going to practice all 4 different ways to make sure you guys have this, okay? But today our focus is going to be over here on this right side, focusing on using division to solve, okay? So if I have 5f is equal to 60, Well, when I see a number and a letter right next to each other, or a number and a variable, I know that it means that they're multiplied together. So to undo that multiplication, I'm going to do the inverse operation, which just means to divide. So I'm going to change my color here so you guys can kind of track what I'm doing here. So I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides of the equal sign. What that does is it cancels out the 5s on the left side of the equal sign. So I'm left with F equals 60 over 5. And what I know is 60 divided by 5 is 12. When I would plug that in, it would be 5 times 12 equals 60, which is true. So this is where that multiplication table would come in handy. If you brought your planner home, you could use that chart in the back. But this is why those basic facts are so important for you guys to know. I know I said it over and over and over again, but this is why it's so important, because you need to know them pretty quickly in order to solve some of these more complex things. So the next one says 130 equals 10K. And remember, 10K is the same as 10 times K. And to undo the multiplication, I'm going to divide by 10 on both sides of the equal symbol. So that 10 on the right would be canceled out, and I'm left with K. And 130 divided by 10, so if I have $130 and they're all in $10 bills, how many of them would I have? Just cancel out those zeros, and that tells me that I have 13 of them. Okay, so sorry guys, I got interrupted. But so I left this example up here for you. It says 6x equals 24. So to cancel out the multiplication, 6x, I'm going to divide by 6, which would cancel out my 6's, and I'd be left with x equals 4. Okay, so what I had shown you guys is that this version where they use the traditional or division symbol, instead of that fraction style multiplication or division symbol, it just kind of makes things look a little bit messier, and I don't really like that. So I like to use that division bar. So 6n equals 42. I'm going to divide by 6, and that will cancel out both 6's on the left-hand side. And I have to divide by 6 on the right-hand side as well. So what I'm left with is n equals 42 over 6. And that's just an improper fraction, or another way to look at division. And I know that 42 divided by 6, or what times 6 equals 42, is going to give me 7. So if the division part is hard for you, think about 6 times what is going to get me to 42. Okay? 3x equals 12. I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides of the equal symbol. Cancel out the 3 on the left. I'm left with x equals 12 over 3, or 12 divided by 3, and x equals 4. So if I would go back in and plug that in, you guys, I would have 3 times 4 equals 12. Yes, it's right. True. I'm good. Let's just do a couple more. So again, pause, write them down, and then unpause me and see how you did. So in this case, I'm going to divide by 7 on both sides. I have 7b equals 42. So I'm going to divide by 7 on both sides of the equal sign. On the left-hand side, the 7 paired with the b would be canceled out. So I'm left with b equals 42 over 7. And when I solve that, b equals 6. And I know that because if I don't know the division, I can think of 7 times what is going to get me to 42. 10x equals 90. I'm going to divide by 10 on both sides. Cancel out the 10 by the x. I'm left with x equals 90 over 10. And I know that I can fit 9 $10 bills into 90. So 90 divided by 10 is 9. Last one, 8n equals 64. So to undo that multiplication, I'm going to divide by 8, cancel out the 8 on the left, divide by 8 on the right. I'm left with n equals 64 over 8. Now, when I look at that, 8 can go into 64 8 times, because 8 times 8 equals 64. So your homework is in the comments, or you can go back to Google Classroom. Sometimes you guys enter the answers a little bit differently than how I do, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong, but as I see people, I go in and check. As I see you answer things, if I see that you have the right answer, you just maybe entered it different than I did, I'll make those corrections for you. Okay. Let me know if you have questions. Tomorrow is going to be a review day of using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So if there's one in particular that you're struggling with or just not understanding, make sure that you let me know. You can send me a private comment if you don't want anybody else to know, or you can send me an email, or you can send me a Google Hangout chat. But just let me know what you want me to specifically talk about so I can make the video be as supportive and helpful to you as possible. Talk to you guys soon.